Hello everyone and welcome. In today's video I'm going to be showing you guys how I animated these light trails to come out of the light cycle. So this light cycle, if you're not aware, is from the new TRON Ares movie that came out a couple of weeks ago. So it's been out for a while. It's really cool. The main challenge with this animation is how do you get the bike to like lean and move in a way that's like realistic, and furthermore how do we get the light trails to trail behind it in a way that really also matches the way that it's moving and leaning. Um, so that'll be exciting. If you guys want to follow along, you can grab this light cycle that I've modeled from my Gumroad. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. So yeah, just grab it and follow along. Let's get started. So I'm going to describe what setup we have first. We have the scene here, which is basically the environment in our case. It's basically just a road. It's a giant circle, just goes around and around like that, and that's it. It's a geometry node setup, but you can use any scene you like, anything you want. And then our main component here is the bike, and it's made up of I guess 3 or 4 parts. The first one is the armature, which is the rider. Second, we have the light cycle itself, which is just the bodywork. All of the entire bodywork is just, I have just merged it into one thing, makes things nice and simple, at least for you guys. We also have the rear spinner, so I've set it up inside the rear wheel and we have the corresponding front spinner that's inside the front wheel. These are mainly just like these are just like circular objects. These are just objects that have some emission shaders on them, and I will animate them to like rotate, so it gives the illusion that it has something moving inside of it, but really there isn't. But that's basically these are the only objects that we will need for the bike. Yeah, so that's the setup we'll start with. So one more important thing I'd like to mention is the origins that all these objects have. So for example, the main body, the light cycle, has its origin. I've set it up to be in the middle of the rear wheel, and so has the rider. I will be parenting everything to something that I will set up at the center. Just makes things turn out a lot nicer. And yeah, let's begin. So we started by defining a path object to define the track that it will follow. So we will begin with that. So I'm going to do a Shift A, and I will add a path. We can do a path like that. And a couple of things that I will change about this is the starting position. So I'm going to select this guy and set it up over there, and tab out of edit mode, and I will set the origin to be there. Then I'll move my cursor back there so that I can snap selection to there, so it just starts out at the center of that wheel. And now I can just mold this path to have the path that I want the bike to take. So we'll just like work on that for a second. So I'll just do that real quick. I'll set it up to just start out really straight first, and then I will go into tab mode, select everything, and just start scaling it for as long as I want. I'll just keep going. I'll just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. You can start by defining a very rough general path and then add like more vertices on it to change how it, basically to change the curvature and the resolution, let's say.
I think this, for the purposes of this video, this might be long enough. Yeah, it might be long enough. So now I'll just start loading these. I'll start with this guy. I'll just let him follow along this curve, just like that. Maybe I'll just let him lean into one side, or maybe not. No, we'll just let him out. No hard and fast just yet. I'm going to move these guys a little bit like this, and then just keep doing that until I've gotten the general path that I want. And finally this one. Okay. Now you can see what path it's going to take.
Okay. So that's the general path that we're going to take, and now I'll just start adding my details, like the specific curves, the specific turns that I want it to take. So I will start with one over there, maybe. Yeah, I'll start it out up here.
So I will start by subdividing these guys. I'll subdivide that. So it's obviously a bit too smooth. We're going to tighten it up, don't worry. And this is how we do that.
I will add just more control points. Can I bevel this maybe? No, okay. I'm gonna have to do it the hard way. So I'll subdivide this again. This might work better. Yeah, that works. That tightens it up, as you can see. And then I'll just subdivide these. Subdivide. Move my cursor there and crunch that down. Crunch it, crunch it, crunch it. And then do the same here.
Subdivide. Cursor there. Just crunch this guy. Crunch it. And I think we need to do one more here. So I'll subdivide this guy. Move my cursor. And crunch it down.
Okay. So we have our curvature, right? So the next thing we'll do now is to give it a profile, which will define basically the light trail itself. This just defines the path. But just for purposes of being a little more organized, I'm gonna start just cleaning everything up. Let me call this guy the trail track. Just call it the trail track, and I'm gonna move it to a new collection, which I'm gonna call trail. Let's do that. That's one thing. Okay, we're off to a good start. Okay, so now I'm going to create the profile object that I will use to render the profile of our track. And to do that, I will actually borrow some meshes from the bike itself, just because it's easier to keep everything aligned. So to do that, I'm going to hit edit mode on the bike here, and going to edge select mode, select this edge and the corresponding opposite side, so that guy, and then I'll hit Shift D and Y. So now it's moving along the y-axis of the bike and not the global y-axis. Hopefully you've noticed that. So I'm going to do that, hit P and separate it by selection, so the parts that I've selected, and we now have two components. I'll move this, let me rename this guy, let me call it the trail profile, just so we're communicating a little better. Move it into trail, into that collection there. Now I'm going to turn this back to, I think it was global. Okay, let's move it here. Okay, object set origin to geometry, so it's in the middle. Move my cursor there. So now I can scale it. Zero. We'll merge them all by distance. Hopefully that will simplify things. Yeah, okay. Because I don't really need a very complicated mesh, so I'm just simplifying it. And that should give us what we want. I actually also don't really need it to be circular, so I'm just going to delete half of them. Let's do that. X vertices and select these guys and we'll scale X, Y, 0. So it's turned into a flat object. We can dissolve some of these vertices. We don't need those. And I think that gives us what we want. I'll just do a quick check to make sure we have single vertices everywhere. We do. And set origin to geometry. Snap, selection to cursor. Okay, so it's perfectly aligned so far. And luckily the axes are also maintained, so if I move it along the object's own y-axis, it will go in the direction that I want. Also really important is to convert it into a curve. Convert to curve. So we've defined our profile now. So I'm gonna now select my track itself. I'll go down here and give it a profile. So I'm gonna select on the profile that I selected, and we have a small issue, which is that the alignment isn't right. So I will fix that. 90. That doesn't work out. RC 90. So if I apply the scale on this guy, it just kind of works out. So we'll do that. And look at that, we have our trail going up and over very nicely. Now, Some small adjustments we're going to start making is to start adding tilts along the curve. And to do that, we're just going to go into edit mode on this track. And if you hit your N key, it's going to pull out this menu over here. We're going to go into item, and where you see tilt is now where you can start just twisting the thing around. So for example, if I hit these guys here, or two of them, both of them, and I start adjusting the tilt, we can see that it starts twisting it around. Let's just move ourselves over to that side. So that worked out. I'll just tilt one of them a little bit more than the other, and we can just keep doing that. So I'll go to this side and maybe and that's our track, right? It's got that tilt and everything. So this will do. So obviously feel free to like take this and like extend it to your use cases. So if you want to make it longer, if you want to add more complexity, if you have obstacles, just like curve and meander around them the way you want. Okay, so now I'm going to animate this ribbon of light. So to do that, we just come into this section here, and under the start and end mapping is now when we start to animate it. First thing you want to do is kind of figure out how long you want your animation to be. I will go with maybe something like 300 frames. I think that's, we can make it 500. Why not? Let's do 500. So that's going to be 500 divided by 30, which is, if I render it at 30 frames per second, that's going to give me 16 seconds of animation. So you can use that rule of thumb. Do you really want it to take what was it, 16 seconds? 16 seconds to go from here to there. It might be a bit too slow, which is why I think I want to go with maybe 300. So it takes 10 seconds to go from there all the way to the end. That would be pretty fast, I think. So we'll come down here, and right now we gotta mess around with this other guy. I'll change this to spline. I'll change this to spline. We don't need to mess with that at the moment, but let's just go till there, hit the animate, and then bring it all the way, go all the way to the end of the video and bring this down to 0 and hit the other, and basically put in another keyframe. That's what we did. So now if I start playing this, we can see that it sort of goes. It's also tilting, as you can see. It's going to do its thing and keep going, and that's how it goes. One other thing we're going to do, which is really important, is Blender likes to interpolate this in the time domain. It likes to interpolate it in a different way. I'm not sure what way that is particularly, but it's not the kind that I want. So to fix that, we're gonna go into the graph editor. It's somewhere here, and you probably can't see much, but all you gotta do is hit A, so it selects everything, right click and change the interpolation to linear, and that's it. You don't really need to pay attention to anything that's going on here if you don't want to. But basically, if I undo that, you'll see that it's, the way it moves is a bit smooth, right? It smoothened it out, and that doesn't really work well for us. So that's why I changed it to linear. If you do that, then we can go back into the layer 3D viewport, and now it will move at constant velocity throughout the entire animation. And it's just going to do that thing, which is pretty cool. So once we've done that, now what we want to do is link up the bike to follow the trajectory of that ribbon, but we're going to do it in an indirect way. So we need an empty object, and that's what we're going to do now. Okay, so Now we have our animated ribbon, right? It goes on, it goes off like that, blah blah blah. It does its thing. It's moving at constant velocity as well. What we want to do now is ask the bike to follow that curvature, right? So that it tilts with it, it moves with it, everything. The way we're going to do that is through an intermediary, an empty. So we'll ask the empty to follow the curvature, the trail, and then we'll parent the bike and all the components to that empty object. So let's do that. Let's go to the beginning and let's add, and I already added an empty, but let me just start over. I'll add an empty right here, and I will apply the location. That's important. And here I will just add in a follow path constraint and ask it to follow the trail track that we defined. We'll do that. We'll hit follow curve, and when we do that, I believe it should work right out the bat. So that's really neat. If you've watched my previous tutorial on this, this was a little bit more complicated, but that was like about 2 years ago. There have been a lot of updates to Blender since then, so things have changed. So this is nice. This makes life a lot more easy, a lot more easier, I think. And we're almost done. So let's just set this back to the beginning, and now I will just start parenting everything to this empty. Okay. So let's just select everything in the bike, select objects, and we're gonna move it forward. And I'll do it from here in this case. So I'll just grab it and move it a little bit forward, just a little bit until okay. I think that's okay. So we do that. We'll do this. Select the empty and parent. So Control P object. Select the rear spinner. Control like this. Control P object. Do the front spinner to the empty object. Did we do the bike? We haven't done the bike yet, have we? We have done the bike. What we haven't done is the rider. So let's hit the rider, the empty, Control P object, and that should fix everything. Now let's take a look at what we have. Yeah, it's looking pretty cool. So last but not the least, let's add a material to this ribbon of light. So we're gonna work on that. Let's add a new material. We're gonna call it trail material. We're gonna do that, and then we're gonna head over to the shading tab. When we're in the shading tab, we need to kind of see what we're doing. So I will begin by changing it to rendered to material preview. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna hit Control T. I will get rid of the image texture, and I will change this to object. Do that. Shift A, wave texture. Plug that in. Plug that to the vector. Plug that to the base color, and we should see some waves. Now it's obviously not in the correct direction, so we're going to mess around with a few of these things until we get what we're looking for. And I don't think that worked out. Okay, we're going to do that, and then we're going to change the scale, but not on the y-axis, not on the x-axis, but definitely the z-axis. Okay, so we're going to go with something. Looks like we're going to have to go with something like 0.0 1. That might be too small. Let's go 5. Yeah, I like this. Let's do that. Something's off, isn't it? Can I go back to this guy? Oh, I think it's okay. Okay, let's do that. So the white regions will correspond to the bright sections where you have a lot of red light being emitted, and the dark sections correspond to just a lot of transparency. So I want to sort of crunch that a little bit, which is why I'm going to add a color ramp over here. Color ramp. There we go. I'll just plop that in there. And now I can sort of crunch this the way I want. If I want to move it, let's move this along the z-axis as well, ever so gently. No, too much, too much. Okay, 6, if we do 6, 5, oh, 6, 5 is too much, and 6 is too little. So let's see if we can do 6, 2, 5. That, yeah, that's kind of okay. Change this to B-spline so that it's a little bit smoother around there. We'll do that, then I will duplicate this and plop those in and plop that into the alpha. That's for the transparency. If I can find it, there it is. Plop that to the alpha and move that into the emission color. Oh, sorry, the strength. And I think, what did we do for the color? I'm not entirely sure. I think we did this actually. We sent it to the color. We put something like 100 there. And we changed this to a red color. You can make it maybe orange if you want. Let's put it like that. And we'll leave this to be maybe a darker-ish gray, dark maroon rather. We'll do that. Put that away. Shift to render view. This might be easier to judge. Alright. Yeah, these look okay, but maybe let's not put it completely black. Let's just make it like grayish so that it's a little bit transparent. Can I change this to be a little bit something like that? Yes. Can I also change how much I've crunched the dark sections? Maybe. Yeah, let's do something like that. I can increase the strength of this to maybe 200. Let's do 500. In which case, let's tone these back down. Yeah. Let's tone this back down, make it darker and more transparent. And that's it. Now, in previous tutorials and probably the animations that you see at the beginning of the video, we had some squiggly lines. That's because I thought there would be some squiggly lines there, but that's not the case. You can have them be straight if you want, but if you do want some distortions on them, what you do is you just mess around with the distortion, and you can just go nuts with however you want. That will give you a little more realism, a little more entropy, maybe. It's up to you. So I'll just set this back to 0, and I'll change what we're dealing with. And it's looking pretty good, pretty good. Let's see. There we go. Congratulations.